Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air. This podcast is dedicated to the millions of family caregivers who want wellness tips and self-care solutions, who seek expert advice, and who want news about healthy aging and how to create well home design in our forever homes. I'm Sherri Snelling, a corporate gerontologist, author, and educator, a TV interviewer, host, and news commentator. I'm joining you from Southern California, where our interviews and news take us all across the country to explore the many ways to help you on your caregiving journey and to lift you up here at Caregiving Club On Air. Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air and our August episode, where we're going to be focused on National Wellness Month, as well as National Relaxation Day, and our interview with our expert guest, MacKay of Yoga4Caregivers. We're also going to be talking about International Dog Day and National Friendship Day, as well as National Beach Day. And then we're also going to focus on National Booklovers Day and a little shout out because it's the 1-year anniversary of the publication of my second book, Me Time Monday, the weekly wellness plan to find balance and joy for a busy life. So we have a lot to talk about this episode. I'm your host, Sherri Snelling. And as I mentioned, we're going to have MacKay from Yoga4Caregivers on. It's going to be a really great discussion. She's also going to lead us through a little breathing exercise, which is super helpful and really something easy that all caregivers and everybody can do. Ellen and I actually just recently met. We were both the guest experts on the kickoff for National Wellness Month for Reimagine Aging Clubhouse, which is hosted by Debbie Howard and Linda Sherman, who are good friends who brought us all together. So that's going to be a really wonderful interview that you're going to want to stick around for. And then, of course, in Caregiver Wellness News, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the importance of friendships for National Friendship Day and our social health. I'm also going to share with you some news recently from the U.S. Surgeon General about the risk factors of social media. That's really interesting. For International Dog Day, I'm going to tell you about the Aging Dog Project, which is fantastic and actually something you can get involved in. But it's also about how our dogs can develop dementia and what we can do to prevent that, as well as looking for some of the research and secrets behind how our dogs can live longer and how we can live longer. So you want to stay tuned for that. And then, as I mentioned in Well Home Design News, we're going to focus a little bit on National Booklovers Day, which is on August 9th. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to use books in your design at home. But we're also going to talk about Blue Wellness, which is one of the big chapters in my book. And that's really focused around all things that have to do with water and coastal living. And we're going to talk about some of the most recent trends from the spas and resorts that you can bring into your home. And of course, as I mentioned, we're also going to do Blue Wellness as our Me Time Monday wellness hack, which always comes at the end of every episode. So we have got a lot to talk about. Stick with us, and we'll dive right into Caregiver Wellness News in just a moment. But what I want to do first is actually talk about loveyourbrain.com, which, as you know, our last episode, we interviewed Adam Pierce, who's the co-founder of loveyourbrain.com. They have wonderful mindfulness and other programs that you can do, and you can join live, you can watch on demand. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. But we want to do a shout out that you should go to loveyourbrain.com, sign up for their newsletter. They do have some caregiver respite and some caregiver courses that are coming up. So you want to take advantage of those and check those out. And again, if you want to hear the whole interview with Adam, you can go to our episode 42, which is the episode just before this one. But again, just a shout out and a reminder to go to loveyourbrain.com. So I'm going to kick off Caregiver Wellness News talking about National Friendship Day, which we celebrate on August 4th. And oh, by the way, that was my mom's 80th birthday. So big shout out to mom. Happy birthday, mom. We all got together as a family and celebrated, which is so wonderful. And what's really interesting is, we know that our social wellness, our social health, our social fitness is important to our longevity, our happiness. In fact, it's one of my 7 elements of wellness in my book is social wellness. And back in our episode 41, I think it was with Sadia Gajadar of Comfort Keepers, they had recently done a survey of older adults and adult children and found that 50% of adult children name their older parent as one of their best friends. And I can raise my hand and say that's absolutely true. My mom is definitely my best friend, which is really nice. I think it's nice to show that there is, those strong ties with family that can be so helpful and build resiliency and comfort and support for both generations. Now, I wanted to also talk in terms of friendships that the U.S. Surgeon General came out with a report just a couple months ago saying that we should have warning labels on all social media. And he specifically cited the teen suicidal ideation, the mental health issues that we've been seeing on the rise now in younger generations. But I think it really affects all generations. When you are spending all of your time on social media and it's probably impacting your sleep, it's probably impacting your mental health as well. And we want to go from a balance of having these social media relationships. And let's face it, how many of the many followers that you may have are you really, tight with? Are they part of your inner circle of your social convoy, which is something I talk about in my book? Versus the real life or IRL, in real life relationships are so critical. Part of the reason why they're critical is, again, I talk about the 4 hormones of happiness, and oxytocin is one of those 4 hormones. And you really only get that by being near other people that you feel bonded to, that you trust, that you love, and having physical closeness. Whether you're touching them, whether you're just close enough to feel their breath, the warmth of their skins, look into their eyes deeply and know that there's that connection between you becomes really critical. And it does boost our happiness. And you don't get that on social media. So just a couple quick shout outs there for National Friendship Day. Now, moving into International Dog Day, which for all of my friends out there who are dog lovers, I always love to do a shout out because we know that pets are an essential part of our health. I write about pets from a spiritual wellness perspective in my book and talk a lot about the benefits that we get as pet owners. And International Dog Day is very interesting. We celebrate that on August 26th. And there is a project out there called the Aging Dog Project. And, we already know that when you own a pet, and particularly I think for dog owners, because we have to walk our dogs, there's an incentive there to be a little bit more physically, healthful because you got to get out and walk the dog. And you get out into the sunshine, which is always really good. But there's that, it lowers blood pressure. It helps us with calming anxiety. So pets are really beneficial, both physically and emotionally to us. But this Aging Dog Project is really fascinating. And you can actually sign up for it with your dog. So I'm going to have a link on the episode guide page, but the scientists who are involved in this project are actually headquartered in Washington State, and they're looking at a lot of different issues. They're looking at what makes dogs live longer. They're diving into things like doggy dementia. We know that dogs get dementia. In fact, a report from the group said that 14 to 35% of older dogs will develop dementia, and it is 6 times higher in dogs who are inactive and sedentary. So again, you only need 5,000 steps a day to really move all your muscles and joints and get your blood pumping and have that be really helpful and beneficial. Dogs help us achieve those 5,000 steps, and it's also good for the dog. So even if you're not thinking about yourself, we want to keep our dogs healthy and happy too. So What's interesting is a lot of the research, they're also looking at drug therapies, they're looking at longevity, and they know that a lot of these things then are going to be translated into human clinical trials and human research is going on for longevity and better health. So it's a really, really interesting project, and you may want to check it out because, as I said, you can sign up your own dog and you can take different surveys, and some of them are a little bit more, involved time-wise, where you get your veterinarian to also share some of the paperwork and things on your dog's health, but you can do as much or as little as you want. And it's kind of a really cool project. And I just wanted to do a shout out to them for International Dog Day, August 26th. And then, of course, National Relaxation Day is August 15th. And we're going to hear a lot more from Ellen MacKay, who is our expert guest for this episode. She is one of the founders of Yoga4, that's a numeral 4, Yoga4Caregivers.com. And she's going to tell us all kinds of stuff. But in this category of National Relaxation Day, I did want to let you know there was a really great study from UCLA researchers that came out a few months ago. It was a little bit earlier this year. And they found that a certain type of yoga, which is Kundalini, and I think that Ellen's going to talk to us a little bit about that, but Kundalini yoga provides benefits to cognition and memory, specifically in women. And we know that women are 66% of all of the Alzheimer's diagnoses and cases that are out there. So people with Alzheimer's, 66% of them are women. So this was a really interesting study. And there's a lot of good science in there, and I'll have a link again on the episode guide page. But what they found is that specifically women aged 50 plus, so I'm in that category, experience reduced inflammation, which we know helps with a lot of different chronic illnesses, whether it's heart disease, whether it's COPD, whether it's diabetes. I mean, that inflammation is the big, dreadful character that we want to keep at bay inside of our systems. And it also improved neuroplasticity. Now, I've talked about brain health in the past, and neuroplasticity, of course, is where we're actually building stronger connections between the neurons in our brain. We call it neural scaffolding. And when you do certain brain exercises, when you do things like yoga, which is going to engage your breathing, and again, I'm not going to take away from Ellen because she's going to tell us all about that, but that actually helps with neuroplasticity. So you are building those neurotransmission messaging highways in your brain and making them stronger. And this is going to help you as you age with your prohibiting and preventing cognitive decline and keeping your brain healthier and keeping you a lot sharper for a lot longer period of time. So yoga is very, very beneficial for that. And you're going to learn all about that from Ellen. And as I mentioned, Kundalini yoga, and there's so many different types of yoga that are out there. That was the specific type of yoga that was in this UCLA research. So if you are really interested in this, again, I'll have a link to the research on the episode guide page. But if you're just looking for what type of yoga was that'll help me build back my neuroplasticity and my brain cells and all these things, that's the type of yoga that you want to maybe take a look at. So without further ado, I'm going to go into this wonderful interview that I did with Ellen. She was so great. We both were as I mentioned, we were in the Reimagine Aging Clubhouse together that Debbie Howard and Linda Sherman co-host, and they invited both of us on to kick off National Wellness Month, and then I invited Ellen here to continue and be part of that National Wellness for my podcast. So here's my wonderful interview with Ellen MacKay of Yoga4Caregivers. So I am really thrilled to have my guest, Ellen MacKay, who is the founder of Yoga4Caregivers. And just a quick little background on Ellen. She and I recently met. We were both invited to be in the Reimagine Aging Clubhouse by our mutual friends, Debbie Howard and Linda Sherman. Give a quick shout out to them. And we were both speaking for the kickoff to National Wellness Month, which is also kind of the theme of this podcast episode for us. And just to tell you a little bit more about Ellen, and then she's going to tell us her story. But Ellen is a social worker. and a seasoned trauma-informed yoga teacher with 17 years of experience. She's obviously a small business owner, having started Yoga4Caregivers and some other things, a former family caregiver for both of her parents, and recently has had her whole own health issues where she's experienced caregiving from the other side. So, Ellen, I'm just really thrilled you were able to make it today to be on our podcast. So welcome to Caregiving Club On Air.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here and just share some of my experience and knowledge with anyone that can use it.
Well, this is such a perfect theme, as you and I both love wellness techniques and everything. And we know that certainly yoga and certainly breathing is a big part of that. But before we get started, I want to just ask you, we ask all our guests, where are we talking to you from today?
I am outside Portland, Oregon.
Fantastic. And how's the weather in Portland today?
Today it is beautiful. Probably going to be in the 80s, sunshine, nice breeze, beautiful day.
Well, we love to hear that. I love Portland. It's just so, when I think of like forest bathing and forests, I think of our Pacific Northwest and places like Portland. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful city. So let's first start with, I'd love for you to tell us your story as a caregiver, because as I mentioned, you've really experienced caregiving from both sides of that equation. So tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So I started my journey in caregiving when my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2015. She went through some different treatments, but in the end, she eventually went through hospice. So she was at home, and I shared caregiving with my dad and my brother. And it was definitely a challenge. During her stays in the hospital, I would usually be there just because it was easiest for me to go. And as a caregiver, it can be feel really overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before. You're learning a whole bunch of things that you never thought you'd have to know or would ever know. And I used a lot of my yoga experience during those times of overwhelm, anxiety, stress, and to kind of help myself stay balanced so I could stay present, not only for my mom, but give information back to my dad and my brother, and also take care of my two little kids. So I was definitely in the sandwich generation at that point in time. And then after my mom passed in 2018, about a year later, my dad's COPD started to really intensify. And then I became his caregiver for the last few months before he passed. And, with caregiving comes a lot of emotional feelings, changes, but also a lot of physical demands. If you're picking up, carrying around, or even just all the extra work that comes along with caregiving sometimes can be a lot on your own physical body. So I felt like it was so important to keep that balance going so I could keep going. Because I know if I, got sick or was too tired, what was going to happen,
Right. And as you said, your sandwich generation, not only what was going to happen for your older parents that you were caring for, but also your younger kids, right? You were right in the middle of all of that. One question I have for you, because you were already an expert and a practitioner of yoga when you went into your caregiving roles for your parents. How difficult do you think it would have been, or what advice could you give to caregivers out there who may be listening, who haven't yet practiced yoga, haven't yet picked up breathing techniques? How hard is it to get into that when you're in that midst of caregiving, kind of the eye of the storm of caregiving?
Sure. So being in the eye of the storm, as you put it, of caregiving, it can feel like, how can I add one more thing? How can I learn something new? How can I start something new? I already don't have time for what I'm doing already. So my main suggestion would be just start with breathing techniques, which we'll go through a little bit today for a few different reasons. One, it's super accessible. So you can do it almost anywhere. You can do it while you're waiting in the doctor's office. You can do it when you're just have a moment to sit down, or you're just standing in your kitchen getting ready to do dishes or something. It's super accessible. And you can do it for as long as you have available. So let's say you have 30 seconds, you can pause, focus on your breath, and just feel that nervous system come down a little bit. And that's why I think breathing is probably the number one thing I would recommend if you're just getting started, never tried anything like this before, because it directly affects your nervous system. So as a human, we have this awesome body that does all these things automatically. And thankfully, breathing is one of them. We don't really always have to think about it, right? But it can have a huge effect on our calming system. So we have in our autonomic nervous system, we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic is that fight or flight, that action kind of stress response. And then our parasympathetic is our rest and digest, or our relaxation response. So when we can focus on our breath, especially our exhales, that kind of switches from our sympathetic to our parasympathetic. So our stress to relaxation. And even just giving the body a 30-second break of that constant stress response, which happens a lot in caregiving because we're, feeling pretty stressed. When we can take a break from that chronic stress, healing already begins. And that's how we continue to find that balance. So if it's 30 seconds, if it's 2 minutes, if it's 5 minutes, that can really have a big effect for the amount of time that you have.
Well, I think that's really important too, because so often we think we're not going to get any benefit unless we spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever it is doing anything, right? Exercising, all that kind of stuff. And yet it's the small little kind of baby steps I talk about in Me Time Monday, but it's those small steps that really have that benefit that can add up and get you on that pathway of making it, integrating it more into your daily routine. Look, I want to get more into the details of breathing techniques in yoga, but first, tell us about what was the difference in how you felt and how you responded to both, from your caregiving experience, caregiving for your parents, and then switching into your health issues. You can tell us about that journey and how they were different for you.
Sure. So, when my mom first got sick, this was all very new to me. So I felt very alone. I think that happens a lot with caregivers too, unless you're already in a group where, your friends or family members have been caregivers before. But if you're new to the group, it can feel really isolating. And I think I felt that way in the very beginning. And my practice kind of helped me relax and be present, which was really, really important as a caregiver. Just kind of taking your own stress off and being able to really be there for whoever you're taking care of. And as I moved through my own caregiving experience, I learned more and more about how important that was. So by the time I came to my own time to receive care, I understood a bit of what it was like on the other side. So I was able to tell my husband, okay, listen, you're going to feel alone, you're going to feel stressed, you're going to feel worried. So make sure you take time out for yourself whenever you can. Make sure you accept help from anyone that's willing to give it, even if you think you don't need it. Ask for help, even if you don't think you need it. And communicate. If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out. Find somebody you can talk to. If I'm not up for having a conversation, connect with someone, whoever it is. And I feel like, and I said, I've got these great yoga videos that you can watch too if you're feeling stressed. But I think I was able to understand where he might be coming from and what he might be experiencing. So I could give him a little more support in the smallest way that I could as the receiver of care.
Right. And I think, it's interesting because you mentioned feeling all alone. That's something I've heard as well from the caregiving community. And then the asking for help almost seems in some ways to be a little bit of our Achilles heel as caregivers. And I think there's a variety of reasons, right? Nobody can care for our loved ones as well as we can. Of course, we know that. So it's hard to give up that role. But also, I think sometimes we don't want to be burden to other people. And we think if I ask somebody, then I'm bringing them into this kind of emotional space with me. And you mentioned something else I thought was really important. And we can get into this, when you talk about yoga or the breathing that I want to touch on first. But You mentioned that your ability to be more present. And one of the things I found fascinating in my research for my book was this whole notion of emotional frequencies and vibrations, and how bodies being close together, similar to how the planets are close together. There's this whole energy force and energy field. And I know that is a big part of the practice of yoga. But tell us a little bit your thoughts on, because I think it's important for us to recognize that not only are these types of techniques you're going to tell us about going to help us as caregivers, but when we can be more calm, more present, more hopeful, more optimistic, we're putting that energy out there to help our loved one who might be battling, a disease or a challenge with a disability, as well as, like you said, your kids that you're also caring for, who don't want to see mom distressed and distraught, right? So talk a little bit about that kind of emotional vibrancy and frequency connection.
Sure. So when we can become present, we can become connected. And I think that's the biggest thing to understand and really notice in your own experience. Not only can we connect to other humans that we're either, caring for, receiving care from, or just receiving help from, but we can also connect to something bigger, whatever, if you have a higher power, whatever that is for you. But in that present moment is really the only time that we can connect to any other kind of energy. If our bodies are here and our minds are someplace else, then we ourselves are not connected. We're separated in different spaces. So only when we are connected can we connect with others in that very deep, meaningful way, which I think is so important for our mental health, our emotional health as well.
So let me ask you, you obviously, because you practice this with your parents, when you then became more of the care recipient with your husband, did he take your advice? Did he do some yoga, or did he practice some breathing and get some me time for him?
He did. I was really proud of him. He's really been along with me in this journey of not only yoga. We actually went to our very first yoga class together, and it was actually his idea. I was like, I don't know. I don't think that's for me. And then he dragged me to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever experienced. But I think especially during his time of being the caregiver, he did a really good job at taking time out for himself when he could. So if I was resting or, it wasn't something that I needed him right then, he would take some time to do some self-care, whatever that was, whether it was going for a walk, taking a nap, playing some video games, doing whatever it is, writing, being creative, something that kind of filled him up. So he had something to give when I needed him.
Right.
Also, he was really great at accepting help. So if someone said, hey, can I bring over food, or can I pick something up for you? He was like, yep, that sounds great. Thank you.
That is wonderful. That's something we all need to learn, is that yes, I can, please help, which is wonderful. And just quickly on your health status, your health date, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I finished up my treatment. I've got a clear scan. So hopefully we're just kind of on our way up from here.
Well, congratulations, and always sending the best wishes on that. So let's dive in now to your expertise. I know that when we talked on the Clubhouse, you said, let's start with breathing, because that's kind of the foundation, the easiest thing you said for caregivers to really adapt and adopt to into their routine. Tell us more about, you were talking about how it helps the stress response with our autonomic, nervous system. But tell us a little bit more about why breathing is so essential, and maybe what are some of the techniques or the practices that listeners can adopt.
Sure. So through yoga, the breathing practice is called pranayama. And the reason in the yoga world, the idea of our breathing techniques and why we do them is because as we inhale, we bring in prana, which is kind of like our positive life energy, something that like fuels us and heals us and fills us up. And then on our exhale, we release apana, or kind of like what's left over, what we don't need anymore, what's not serving us, whether that's just like physical stress that we can let go of. So it's that balance. And when we can pause and really focus on our breath, we're finding more of that balance. We're finding more of that bringing in of the prana and releasing of the apana. So we can do an easy breath practice together here if you'd like.
Sure.
And I'm going to give you a couple of different options. That's the one thing I love about yoga, is that there's always an option. There's always something that fits for you. You know, if it doesn't work right away, keep trying. And there is always something that will work. So we'll start with just counting our breath. So you can close your eyes if you want, just kind of settle into where you are and begin to notice your inhale and exhale. So you might be breathing into the nose, you might be breathing through the mouth, maybe you feel movement in your chest or your belly or your back, really becoming in tune with how your body is working as the breath moves. And the mind will wander, and that's totally okay. That's just kind of what the mind does. So when you notice your thoughts somewhere else, just come back to that sensation of breath. And now we'll start to add some counting. So see if you can inhale for maybe a count of 4 and exhale for the same count. In yoga, that's called equal breathing or samavriti. Inhale 4, exhale 4. If those numbers don't quite work, that's okay. Change them up. Just see if you can inhale and exhale for the same thing. Wonderful. And if it feels okay for you, see if you can start to take that exhale a little bit longer. So if you were exhaling for a count of 4, maybe try and exhale for 6. We'll take about 2 more rounds of breath like that. And then I'll give you one more option to add in if you choose. It's called breath retention. It's just a pausing or holding of the breath. So you'd inhale for 4, pause the breath for maybe 2 counts, exhale for 6, and then pause again for 2 counts. And we'll take 2 more rounds of breath like that. Nice. And then allow the breath to come back to its natural pace. Blink the eyes open. And just take notice of how you feel.
It. Yeah, I can feel it. I have to admit, my struggle is with the exhale. I feel like I can get a really nice, deep, 4-count breath. But the exhale, I feel like it's gone into, it's like fast. So I have to, what can I do to make that easier for me to take that longer exhale?
Sure. So a great technique is to pretend like you're blowing out a candle.
Okay.
It restricts the breath a bit, and it allows that exhale to be a little bit longer.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I do feel it. I mean, even just this, quick little moment that we did. By the way, for those of you who might be listening, because I know the sound can be really sensitive, that heavy breathing is my dog sitting next to me, not me. For those of you listening here on the podcast. Well, that is wonderful. And as you said, this can be done anywhere, anytime. But what I would love for you to also tell the audience about, and I thought about this a lot, is very often, and sometimes it even happens to people who have a certain level of faith or spirituality, when something goes wrong or we're super stressed or super challenged, then we are in a crisis and we turn to, okay, let me make this work, let me pray, let me do this or whatever it is. But really, this could be kind of part of our everyday life, like brushing your teeth or taking a vitamin, right?
Definitely. And I think what's so important about that is that if we do it every day, it's there for us when we need it. It's not something I have to recall and think, oh, right, what was that breathing practice? Or how do I do that again? If we do it every day or every other day, or just kind of have some kind of practice with it, when we need it, it's right there for us. And we don't need to go into crisis mode and think, oh, what can I do to help me out here? I'm feeling pretty anxious. I got to look something up on my phone or read something or whatever it is, you can just use it. It's just in your pocket. You've got that tool ready to go, and hopefully you can find a bit of relief.
I love it for a lot of reasons because it fits into, like I said, I have this Me Time Monday program. So it's all about small things. So you can do this for just a couple of minutes. It's something that's free. You don't have to go buy a new, outfit or whatever to do it. And you can do it anywhere, anytime, which is wonderful. And it helps the physical, it helps the emotional and the spiritual. Let's go into now more about yoga, which if you can explain to us, the different types of yoga. I know it's all based around breathing, but now we're getting into movement and some other things. So tell us a little bit about the spectrum of yoga.
Yoga is big. It's got all kinds of different ways to move your body, breathing, meditation, all of that is in one big yoga container. So what we offer most at Yoga4Caregivers is breathing techniques and meditation, short practices. So, 5 minutes or less. And then we do have some movement practices, and we tend to go towards a more gentle practice. We have chair classes, just kind of more slow moving, which is something I would recommend for caregivers who are just getting started or are really looking for some stress relief. That kind of slower, more gentle practice can, again, be really good for the nervous system to just kind of calm down and find that reset. But if you're looking for building strength, for instance, Hatha yoga, Hatha, is a great option. It's a little more strength building than gentle, but it's not so fast paced where you get lost in what's going on. And so if you're looking for more core stability, more back strength, especially if you're doing a lot of carrying or moving in your caregiving role, that would be a great place to start.
Terrific. And I love that. Yeah, the chair yoga and doing something kind of simple if you're not already a yoga practitioner. So many people are. I mean, it's pretty amazing. You've been doing this now for, as you said, over 17 years. And, at one point it seemed like it was a little bit more kind of a new agey West Coast maybe mentality. Now it's everybody everywhere, that we see practicing yoga. But I still feel like there's a lot of people out there who don't fully understand. So if you want to get into these types of things, even the breathing techniques, is it easier to start with classes with you for, Yoga4Caregivers, where you kind of get instruction and you get into a groove? Is that really the easiest way to do it, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, if you're looking for some ways to relieve stress, or whether that's internally, emotionally, mentally, or physically, starting with a seasoned practitioner or someone that's been teaching for a long time and doing short classes is really a great way to start. So that way you don't feel overwhelmed. You can get into your body slowly with little snacks kind of, and slowly build from there. Because yoga is such a personal practice, you're going to find things that you love and you're going to find things that aren't for you. So I think taking those small little bites and figuring out, I really like that. Let me see if I can find some more of that. Or, that movement felt really good. Or, my shoulders need some stress relief. Let me find something specifically for that. So usually, especially in our Yoga4Caregivers YouTube space, you can find something for almost everything. We have low back, neck, shoulders. Those are kind of the two hot points. If you're working on balance, core strengthening, you can really find little snippets of everything. And then if you want, put it all together for, an hour-long practice if you have that kind of time.
Now, I had a question from my audience because I had put out an email that I was going to be interviewing you. Is Tai Chi considered a form of yoga?
Tai Chi is its own separate entity, but it's awesome. It's very similar, slow movement, gentle, great for strengthening, great meditative practice. Also really supportive in the breathing area, if that's kind of what you're looking to build on. So I would say either of those practices are phenomenal.
Well, now tell us a little bit more about Yoga4Caregivers. Are there live classes? Is it on-demand videos you can watch? How does it work? Where do we find you? All that good stuff.
Sure. So that the founder, Jennifer Hennius, found me through Facebook. And this was in 2020. And she said, hey, you know, I noticed you have a degree in social work and you've been a yoga teacher for a long time. I had this idea. What do you think? And I said, I'm in, because I was past my caregiving time with my mom. So I was kind of in that in-between state. And I realized at that point, I was like, wow, caregivers really need as much support as they can get. So from there, we've built Yoga4Caregivers and Caregiver Whole Health, which are really just here to support caregivers in any way we can. We started out with a Facebook group and a Facebook page. So our group is private. You can ask questions, you know, connect with that other community of caregivers so you don't feel isolated or alone. We have a YouTube channel, Yoga4Caregivers, and you can see all of our videos there. Again, we have videos from 5 minutes to up to 60 minutes, kind of whatever your day allows, and different varieties, chair all the way up to kind of more strengthening practices. And then on our website, we have a specific caregiving 8-class course, and it's called Yoga to Cultivate Resilience, because caregivers need that resilience. Like, right, we need to get through some challenging things. We need to know how to find balance and how to find rest. So these 8 courses are about 45 minutes long. So they're a little bit longer than our YouTube classes. But they're really specific to caregivers' needs. We talk about improving sleep, which can be a challenge, especially if you're dealing with chronic stress that can affect, you know, that can deal with insomnia, trouble sleeping, that kind of thing. Boosting your immunity. We do obviously breath work and meditation in that course as well, and that's through our website. So the classes on YouTube are all free, and the course is for purchase on our website, and it's a really great gift for caregivers. So if you know a caregiver, you have one in your life, and you're not quite sure how to help, this is a great way to do that, a great way to support them, because they can access these videos anytime, anywhere, as long as they have an internet connection, they'll be able to practice.
Oh, I love that, because, you know, we've got Wellness Month this month. We've got Healthy Aging and Self-Care Awareness next month. We've got November, National Family Caregiver Month. So you can choose any of these months to gift your favorite caregiver or the caregiver in your life. I love that idea. Well, this has just been really helpful, I think, for me and hopefully for our audience, that, you know, it really, one of the things I think that I write about and that you and I really connected on is we don't often recognize when life is out of balance. And yet we know something's happening because we're feeling burnout, or we're feeling, again, the anxiety, maybe, you know, even things as depression. But we know there's a balance thing that's happened. And doing something like this, the breathing techniques yoga, is what really helps bring you back into balance. And it seems simple, but it's so powerful. So, Ellen, I don't know if you have any last thoughts for our listeners, any tips or guidance?
I would just say, if you're a caregiver, try to find some time, whether it's 2 minutes, even 2 minutes can, as we've hopefully experienced today, can give you a little bit of a break, just a little bit. And as we find those small little moments of quiet or stillness, it gives us even more availability to be present, to be more aware of what we need for balance. I think sometimes we can get so busy and so stressed that we lose touch with our own selves of what we actually need. So take some time for you. Whatever you've got, you deserve it. It'll help you be a better caregiver. It'll help you be kinder to yourself, which we all need. So I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to cheer you on.
Well, that is a great message for National Wellness Month. And Ellen, again, it's just been wonderful having you on the podcast. Tell us again where our listeners can find you.
You can find us on Facebook, Yoga4Caregivers, as well as YouTube, Yoga4Caregivers, and our website, Yoga4Caregivers.com.
And we're going to have a link on our episode guide page. So make it easy for our listeners to get to you. But Ellen, thank you again for, first of all, helping me feel a little de-stressed today through your breathing technique guidance that you gave us. And thank you for sharing all of your insights and wisdom on how we can really bring that balance back into life.
I'm so happy that I could be here with you today. Thank you for letting me share this information and passing it out to anybody that needs it.
Isn't that a really interesting interview with Ellen? She has such a great personal story. And then as well, all of the great work she's doing at Yoga4Caregivers. And if you're interested, by the way, because I think I mentioned while we were talking, the emotional frequencies and vibrational medicine trend. That was some research that was actually in my book, Me Time Monday. And you can check that out. It's actually a chapter called Good Vibrations, but it's all about how we really do reflect our energy, and even our emotional health can be connected to others around us. And it's kind of really interesting science that's out there. So now that we're all relaxed and Ellen's led us through that breathing exercise, let's dive into our well home design news. As I mentioned, National Beach Day is August 30th, and Blue Wellness, which is all about water and coastal living and, being in water and the healing properties that it has for us in a lot of different directions, also spiritual connection to water and all of these things. That's going to be part of our Me Time Monday Wellness Hack at the end of this episode. But I also wanted to bring to you some Blue Wellness home design tips that are actually from the Global Wellness Institute. And they do their trends report, and one just came out recently on the future trends and even what's in place right now in resorts and spas, some of the higher end resorts and spas around the world. And I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting because some of these things we can actually hack and we can actually bring into our own home. So I wanted to kind of bring that to you. So what we can do for Blue Wellness in our home. First of all, if you have a pool, what's really interesting is a lot of these resorts now with their pools, they're actually playing soundscapes of the sea, and they're doing it through artificial intelligence, which is the word of the day, right? Everybody's doing something with AI, but it's actually underwater speakers, which I had not heard of before. So if you have, very cool stuff. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting is that even when you're in water outside, having music that soothes you, having that kind of, we all know that when we go and get a massage or whatever, you're hearing those beautiful, kind of calming, soothing sounds. Well, why not when you're out in the pool? Now, sometimes we want it to be energetic and kind of, fun and rocking and whatever. But if it's just you and you're just kind of floating and helping ease that tension in your muscles and in your mind, then this is really an interesting kind of trend, I think. The other thing is, of course, we've all heard of the cold plunge baths and cold plunge therapy. Again, I write about a lot of that in my book. Very interesting concept that's been around quite a long time, but now it's become very personal because we can all get these cold plunge tubs that everybody seems to be, tapping into. But there's even something beyond cold plunge now, and it's called snow showers. And this is really fascinating. So there is a resort, I think it was in either Malaysia or Singapore, and what they're doing is they actually have snowflakes that fall out of the the faucets and everything, the overhead that you have in a shower, but it's little snowflakes that can fall on you, touch your skin. It's really almost kind of magical, whereas water is very healing. Snowflakes are almost magical. I always talk about snowflakes being similar to caregivers because every snowflake is unique, just like every caregiver is unique. But anyway, I thought that was really fascinating that they're doing now snow bathing and snow showers for their guests that helps with relaxation. And then finally, I think I've talked on this podcast before about sound bathing. I live here in California, so we usually kind of lead some of these trends, but I know they're kind of all over the place now. And sound bathing is really a very interesting meditative exercise. It's very often done in groups, so it can add to your social wellness as well. I've done it before with a group of girlfriends. And what you can do is you can almost do your own sound bathing party where you can have one of these wellness experts come to you and lead your group through this. But what it basically involves, it's a meditative exercise using sound waves. And they're produced through a lot of the healing instruments that are very ancient, that are connected to a lot of these ancient wellness things that I write about in my book. So gongs, singing bowls, percussion chimes, rattles, tuning forks. And they just produce these beautiful sounds that you listen to. And again, it just brings you into a state of relaxation. And it's a really, really fun experience if you haven't tried it before. So my hack for doing sound bathing on your own, if you don't want to bring an expert in and do a whole party around it, are wind chimes. And I love wind chimes. They remind me of my grandmother. I have them on my balcony. You can get them with different tunes, that resonate with you with memories or whatever, or different sounds. But what it gives to me is, it's not always windy here in Southern California, but when it is, and those chimes are kind of, giving off those tinkling sounds, I'm reminded, okay, take a break, Sherri, find some me time, because this is kind of like your warning bell from above, to just kind of listen and maybe go out on the balcony or go outside and just kind of breathe in that fresh air, look at that blue sky. So I really love wind chimes, and I think that's a great hack for any of us to do sound bathing in a very easy kind of way. I mentioned Book Lovers Day is coming up on August 9th, and I want to first of all do a shout out to Marianne Shuto, who is the founder of All's Authors. And I actually interviewed Marianne. I'm going to look for it here. It was on our season 3, episode 31. I'm going to have a link to that episode on the episode guide page. But if you want to listen to what All's Authors is all about, really wonderful group. It's all the authors, all the books, all the TV shows, even they list, all have to do with dementia and Alzheimer's. A lot of it is a personal journey, personal experience. They often have interviews like they did with me on my book. Actually, both books that I did, they have interviews with other authors. They have Facebook, events and all kinds of really wonderful things. So you may want to check that out. So we're thinking about books, and if you're a book lover like me, I have books in every single room of the house, including the bathrooms. But it's a really important part of my life. One of the things you can do that's kind of fun with book design, I just want to give you a couple of fun ideas here. First of all, if you need anything to be elevated, like a lot of people on Zoom now need to have their computers elevated so that your eye line is straight, so you're looking into the camera, not down on the camera, which by the way is a bad look for everybody. So bringing your computer screen up is something that, okay, everybody's looking for, like, okay, where's the old phone books, right? This is when we need the old phone books, because they were so thick and really great for things like this. You can stack your favorite books and stack them in a way where maybe you can see the titles of the books that are inspirational to you, kind of give you a sense of empowerment or keep going or whatever it is, make you laugh. It's just a great way to just kind of stack things. So anything you need to have elevated or whatever is really great. I'm going to share on the episode guide page for you guys a photo of something I saw that was really cool, and it's actually an archway over a doorway, but they made it an archway by using old books and gluing them together. God, it was really fascinating. I really thought it was, beautifully done. And of course, I have done bookcases on both sides of my living room that go all the way up to the ceiling, which kind of forms almost like these columns, and it's really kind of cool. Also just, using books as a design guide. And what I mean by that is, so for instance, when you come into my house, it's kind of like, I have a certain design aesthetic, but each room kind of has its own flavor, its own theme, if you will. So when you walk into my entry, it's really kind of almost 1930s on the French Riviera. So I have this wonderful book by Slim Aarons. For those of you who don't know the famous photographer Slim Aarons, it's called A Place in the Sun. It's one of the best known books that Slim Aarons did. So that's in my entry. Then as you kind of wander into more of my dining room, living room area, I have more of a Hollywood Regency design aesthetic. So I have this fantastic book that I was given called Hollywood Dogs. And I'll have a picture of it that I'll show on the episode guide page. But it's an outline of Audrey Hepburn with a dog. And it's just a great, great book that I love. Then as you kind of meander down towards, my master bedroom, have been a lifelong traveler and I just love all the travels I've been to. And I've done some fantastic things. So I have like a whole travel books and particularly, things like romantic travel, like railroad travel. I have books on the Orient Express. So it just kind of gives you a flavor of who the person is, what their personality is, and particularly that, maybe that area of their life or whatever. And that's kind of a fun way to use books as well. Now moving into my book, because I'm so excited. So I'm going to hold up my book with all my little cheat sheet notes in here because I've been doing interviews like nonstop for the last year. I can't believe it's already been a year since my book came out. So Me Time Monday, the weekly wellness plan to find balance and joy for a busy life. I just want to say, I can't list everybody because honestly, it has been nonstop, but I just want to do a big, big shout out to all of the organizations, all the individuals who have had me come speak, who have interviewed me, who have invited me on their podcasts or, whatever it is to talk about my book, talk about wellness, bring kind of, this whole concept around how caregivers can find just moments of time that bring better wellness, bring better balance, bring joy, back into our lives, but give us that balance in life that is so critical. Because if you think about it, whether it's your health, whether it's a physical health, your emotional health, your social health, your spiritual health, all the 7 elements, financial, intellectual, environmental, those are the 7 that I write about in the book. But all of those things require balance. And that's a really tough nut to crack sometimes. And so the whole book is about little small baby steps you can take every week, checking in with yourself on Monday to find that balance in those 7 different elements of life. And it's fun. People have really gotten a lot out of it. I've had so many also wonderful notes that have been written to me and emails. And what I really was so grateful for with this book, because as you guys know, if you know me, my first book was about family caregivers. And I write for family caregivers, but I've been invited to speak with very different organizations. For instance, a Young Men's Association where I talk to teen boys. And one of my friends, her daughter, who's 12, read my book. But it just brings the smile to my heart because I feel like, wow. And my mom's friends who are in their 80s sent me emails saying, learned your book, learned so much. And so I really felt like I'm touching a lot of different people that I mostly speak to that, mostly sandwich generation caregiver. And now all of a sudden it's kind of gotten a little broader. So that was really one of the magical and wonderful gifts that I got out of writing the book. I write for caregivers and I write for myself. I write about what am I interested in? What do I want to know more about? And this was certainly one of them that I dove into with a lot of research and a lot of science, but also a lot of, stories. There's a lot of really great stories in there. So if you haven't checked the book out, please do. Now, a couple surprising and exciting announcements about the book. Many of you have emailed me and said, can you do an audio version? There is an ebook version, of course, on Amazon and other places like Barnes & Noble and stuff, but no audio version. And so people have said to me, and you should read it because it's your words and you're great at speaking. So, which thank you. But okay, we're gonna do it. We're going to do the audiobook version. I just have to figure out how to get this all together and who can help me produce it and all that. But we will do that. The goal is to maybe try to get that out by November, National Family Caregiver Month. So stay tuned on that. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to do my Me Time Monday wellness hacks for the podcast episodes like you're going to hear in a couple minutes. But I'm also going to try to shorten them And we're going to do 52 wellness hacks for every Monday in the calendar. We're going to kick that off this month with National Wellness Month, but that's going to be little nuggets from the book on how you can find these moments of balance, these moments of joy, these moments of health and happiness. So look for those. We're going to be posting them to our YouTube channel and sharing them on social media and all that. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it and get a lot out of that, but I just thought that would be kind of a fun little complement to the book and help people understand all the different things that they can learn about in the book. So happy anniversary to Me Time Monday and the book finally getting published. It's just been a rock and rolling year, and I just want to thank everybody for all your support and love and everything that you've done to make it success, which is great. Now, I also want to just quickly give you some hacks from the book because I talk about going back to the African savanna and being outside on the plains, and mosaic of trees and wide open spaces and all this. So let me just tell you really quickly from a well-home design perspective. So sight, blue skies. You want to be able to have windows you can look out of. But also staring at the clouds, maybe going out in your backyard and just laying down in the grass, watching the clouds, kind of roll by. Also creating a labyrinth walk, whether it's in your backyard or finding one in a local community center. A lot of people are creating these now, or you could be the creator. I know a lot of people are suggesting to senior centers and community centers, hey, let's create a labyrinth walk for the community. They're really spiritual. They're wonderful. They're like a maze, but there is a beginning and an end, and it doesn't like frustrate your brain or create more stress for you. It's more of how you walk through this, and it's almost like taking a journey through your life where you're really thinking about all these phases of your life. It's a very, very great kind of meditational de-stressor type of activity. Touch. Okay, so breeze, fresh air, open the windows when you can. Have maybe some gauzy, curtains. We've talked about that before. Sound. You want fountains. If you can hear a fountain from an open window, that's fantastic. But also, just opening up the windows and listening to the nature sounds outside, and not all the cars and trucks maybe going by on the street. But doing kind of, some of those nature sounds, even that you can find on YouTube, listening to those. Smell, green, biophilic design. Shout out to actually Sean Hallam of Instant Jungle, who was our expert interview for the first podcast for season 4, which was episode 34. So you can check that out. But Sean told us how to bring greenery into our homes. And boy, if you look at my house now, I have really embraced this, and I can't tell you, I do feel happier. I see the green trees. I have this beautiful, like, small olive tree. I have this little, I call it a silver sheen. It's a pittosporum type tree. And I just feel really happy when I get up and I see the ferns, and I see some palms and stuff. And it might seem like a lot, but actually it isn't. It's all spaced out. 5 is the prescription, by the way, from NASA of the greenery, the green plants you should have in your house. I'm going to have a link to the top 5 plants that give you air care, right? So that help you breathe better and help people like me who have asthma and have, allergies and all those types of things. A lot of this greenery can help. And then finally, taste. When we have lemons and oranges and red and green apples, and even in a glass bowl or something on the kitchen sink or counter, it actually not only does it kind of energize our taste buds, because particularly oranges and reds are the color psychology for kind of going, yeah, let's have us some food here. Because it triggers your brain. When you see color, that is a food source, right? That's going back to the ancient brain. But the colors are also a reminder to eat the rainbow, right? And really make sure that you're getting those different colored foods into your diet and not going into the pantry and grabbing a brown cracker, cookie or whatever. Going for the colors is what we really want to look for. So the sight of seeing that is a great little helpful reminder for all of us to kind of stick with it and eat that rainbow every day if we can. So with that, now I'm going to go to the Me Time Monday wellness hack that we do at the end of every episode. This one, of course, is for National Beach Day, which is August 30th, and it's on blue wellness, which is a big theme and a big chapter in my book. So the book is going to tell you a whole lot more, but this is going to give you just a little snapshot what Blue Wellness is all about. So enjoy. Welcome to our Me Time Monday Wellness Hack. This episode, we focus on the importance of water to our health and wellness routines, also known as Blue Wellness, from the research in my book, Me Time Monday. Humans are deeply connected to blue water. Blue is most often associated with our seas and skies and is a crucial element of nature and of life. When we look at an image of Earth from space, we can see water is all around us, and it is a key source of survival. Humans actually cannot survive more than 3 days without water, which is why it's a good thing that the Earth's surface is 75% water. Now, 60% of the human body and 80% of the human brain are made of water, and 80% of most people in the world live 60 miles or closer to a body of water, whether that's an ocean, a sea, a lake, or a river, meaning we are never far from water that can rejuvenate us. This is a powerful example that shows the connection between not just surviving, thriving, and water is where it really comes into an important part of our wellness practices. Blue is calming. The color blue often plays into our feelings of stability, harmony, peace, trustworthiness, and a sanctuary. Blues and greens calm the body and reduce respiration and lower blood pressure. This is why most surgeons wear a sea green, kind of teal or blue scrubs, which helps calm their patients. In fact, water has healing properties from the ancient Roman baths to today's cold water therapy plunges. Water is also associated with the cleansing or renewal in many cultures and religions. Some scientists believe this sense of calm comes from floating in our mother's womb where it was safe and comforting. That buoyancy innately lowers our stress levels. Now, a lot of studies have shown that coastal living can increase your longevity. In fact, one UK study involving 48 million people in England found that those who lived closer to the coast reported good health regardless of age, gender, race, or socioeconomic status. They also scored better on self-reported health even if those who lived near green parks. Another study found that when doing outdoor activity, people's happiness increased 5% more if they did the activity in or near water. It may be one reason why the Scandinavian countries, such as Denmark, Finland, and Iceland, always rank in the top 3 of Gallup's annual global happiness surveys. All these countries are on the coast, almost entirely surrounded by water. Even the food sources of the sea have healing and health properties. Omega-3 fatty acid fish, such as salmon and shrimp, are good for our hearts and help in brain development. Scientific studies show living by the sea enhances sleep because negative ions in the sea air accelerate your ability to absorb oxygen. One study found that even those who do not live near the coast but who take a 30-minute seaside walk slept 47 minutes longer over the next few nights. Seaside or lakeside living also boosts one of your 4 happiness hormones, serotonin. It also allows for daydreaming, or scientists call it free moving, where we allow ourselves to become more creative in our problem solving and more inventive in our resiliency. Now, nature's cleanse is water. One of the things that we know is we must stay hydrated. Our bodies need to have enough fluids to function properly. Everything from headaches to heartburn to lower back pain, swelling of the ankles, and dizziness can be caused by dehydration. Studies show 1% of dehydration leads to 5% of cognitive impairment, and 50% of all U.S. adults are dehydrated on a daily basis. The U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine determined that a new adequate daily fluid intake is about 15.5 cups, which equals about 3.7 liters or 125 ounces of fluids a day for men. Now, this includes drinking water as well as other beverages, but mostly water, and sometimes even food that might have more water content, such as watermelon. but most of those 15.5 cups or 125 ounces should come from water. And for women, the prescription is 11.5 cups or 2.7 liters, which equals 91 ounces. Now, activities such as strenuous fitness routines where you might be sweating a lot, or certain medications and physical issues that can impact these numbers. So you always want to consult with your doctor before overhydrating or not getting enough water despite these prescriptions from the National Academy. Now, our formula for how much water you should drink is really personalizing it to you rather than using these standard rules that one size fits all for everybody. So here's what we propose. Take your weight and turn it into ounces. So for instance, 160 pounds becomes 160 ounces. Now divide that number in half. So 160 ounces becomes 80 ounces. That is what you should be drinking water per day. And it does not include caffeinated sodas or teas or other liquids. It's strictly your water. Now you can add lemon and cucumbers for zest to, give a little bit more interest to your water, but that's really more personalized to your body and your activity level. So when it comes to wellness, make the nutrition of water and the bodies of water, the ocean, lakes, rivers, backyard or community pool, bathtub, shower, or even cold water therapy tub, part of your routine for better health and more happiness. We hope you enjoyed this Me Time Monday Wellness Hack. Each episode of our Caregiving Club On Air podcast features a new Me Time Monday Wellness Hack. You can find more information in my book, Me Time Monday, the weekly wellness plan to find balance and joy for a busy life, or visit MeTimeMonday.com or CaregivingClub.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Caregiving Club On Air. Please hit the subscribe button to listen to us on our newest channels, Amazon Music, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, Pandora, as well as Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and other listening channels. Check out all the resources and article links on our episode guide page at caregivingclub.com. Just click the podcast tab at the top, and you can email us with comments and questions at podcast@caregivingclub.com. Thank you again for listening. Take care and stay well.